AITA for turning off my location after my wife used it to embarrass me? I'm Hubert, 40, and after 11 years of marriage, I'd gotten used to my wife checking my location before she even asked how my day was. I'm the kind of husband who saves takeout coupons in the junk drawer, forgets where I left my reading glasses, and texts heading home, even when I'm 5 minutes away. For a long time, I thought that was enough to make someone feel secure. Marissa and I had the kind of marriage that looked boring from the outside, which used to make me proud. We had our routines. We knew which side of the couch belonged to whom. We had a shared tablet on the kitchen counter that we used for recipes, video calls with relatives, and looking up store coupons we forgot to use once we were actually in the store. We shared a family phone plan, streaming passwords, grocery lists, and a calendar full of reminders like dentist, trash night, and buy paper towels. So when Marissa first asked me to share my location, I didn't think much of it. It happened after one ordinary night that turned into a fight. My phone died while I was out running errands. I had stopped for milk, then realized the car needed windshield fluid, then ran into a neighbor at the store and talked for a few minutes longer than planned. By the time I got home, Marissa was pacing in the kitchen with her arms folded. "Do you know how worried I was?" she asked before I could even put the grocery bag down. "My phone died," I said. "I'm sorry. I should have charged it before I left. You could have been in an accident." "I know. I'm sorry." She looked genuinely shaken, and I felt guilty. Not fake guilty. Real guilty. I loved her. I didn't like the idea of her sitting there imagining the worst while I was standing in the automotive aisle, trying to remember whether my car took blue or orange windshield fluid. The next day, she said, "Can you just turn on location sharing? Just so I know you're safe." I did it right there at the kitchen island. At first, it was normal. She'd text, "Still at the store?" or "Drive safe." Sometimes she'd send me a little heart when she saw I was almost home. I didn't mind. Honestly, I thought it was sweet in a practical, married people way. I had nothing to hide, and I had spent most of my adult life believing that saying was harmless. Then it changed. If I stopped at a gas station, she wanted to know why I picked that one. If I sat in a parking lot for 12 minutes returning a call, she wanted to know who I was avoiding. If traffic made me take a different route home, she sent screenshots of the map with question marks. If my battery dropped below 20%, she acted like I had personally betrayed our vows. One afternoon, I texted, "Battery's low. Heading home after I grab milk." She replied, "Convenient." I stared at that word for a while in the dairy aisle. Convenient. Like a low battery was a tactic. Like a carton of milk was an alibi. When I got home, she was sitting at the kitchen table with her phone in her hand. "You were at the store for 34 minutes, she said. "I bought milk, cereal, and trash bags." "You said milk." I didn't think I needed to list every item. Her mouth tightened. "A good husband doesn't make his wife wonder." That became one of her favorite lines. A good husband doesn't make his wife wonder. If you respected me, you wouldn't make me ask. If you have nothing to hide, this shouldn't bother you. The strangest part was that while my location became public property inside our marriage, Marissa's phone became a locked vault. She started keeping it face down on the table. She changed her passcode every few weeks. Notifications were hidden. Calls were taken in the laundry room, the bathroom, or outside near the trash bins. If I walked into the kitchen while she was texting, she tilted the screen away like I had barged into a bank vault. Once, while we were cleaning up after dinner, I asked as calmly as I could, "Are we both sharing locations, or is this just me?" She gave me the kind of look people give a dog that jumped on the couch. That is such an insecure question. I'm not trying to be insecure. I'm asking if we're doing the same thing. Because you want to track me now? No. Because you track me. I check on you because I care. Then why would it be different if I checked on you? She put a plate into the dishwasher harder than necessary. Because I'm not the one who disappears for random errands and then acts weird when questioned. I don't disappear. You're twisting this. I dropped it. That was my mistake. Not the first time. Not the last. I dropped a lot of things because I didn't want to be labeled paranoid or controlling. I didn't want to be that husband. I didn't want to make my wife feel watched, even while I was being watched. So I smiled through little comments. I explained ordinary stops. I sent heading home, even when I was 5 minutes away. I stopped sitting in the car after errands because I didn't want to explain why the dot hadn't moved. I started making sure my phone was charged before leaving the house like I was preparing for inspection. I told myself it was easier. The thing about easier is that it gets heavier the longer you carry it. The night everything cracked open was a couple's dinner at Calvin and Tessa's place. It was supposed to be casual. Takeout trays were lined up on the kitchen island. Someone had brought a salad nobody touched. A game was half set up on the coffee table, but no one had read the rules all the way through. One of Tessa's kids had left toy cars under the edge of the rug, and everyone kept stepping around them like landmines. Calvin was one of my closest friends. He was the kind of guy who tried to keep every room comfortable, even when it shouldn't be. Tessa was quieter, observant, and usually the first person to notice when a joke had gone too far. Derek was there too. He had been part of the friend group for years, the guy who always had a half smirk and a comment that sounded harmless until later. I noticed right away that Marissa was in one of her performance moods. That meant she was louder than usual, extra affectionate in a way that felt staged, touching my shoulder while looking around to see who noticed, laughing a little too hard, making comments and scanning the room for approval. At some point, Calvin joked that I was always the first person to arrive anywhere. Hubert's never late, he said. If he says 7 o'clock, he's there at 6:52 pretending not to be early. People laughed. I laughed too, because it was true. Marissa put her hand on my shoulder and said, "That's because I know where he is at all times. I have to keep him on a leash." The laughter changed. It didn't stop completely. It turned into that uncomfortable chuckle people do when they're not sure if they're allowed to look serious yet. I smiled because I had trained myself to do that. Marissa kept going. "No, seriously. If I didn't track Hubert, he'd wander off like a teenager. He'll say he's going to grab milk, and then stop somewhere else like he's on a secret mission." "I stopped for windshield fluid one time," I said. She waved her hand like I had helped prove her point. "The point is, if he has nothing to hide, he shouldn't care that I know where he is." That sentence landed hard. Tessa's eyebrows went up. Calvin looked down at his plate. Derek smirked into his drink. Then Tessa's cousin, who had only met us twice and had no reason to know the rules everyone else had silently learned, asked, "So he can see your location too, right?" Marissa laughed. Not nervous at first. Confident. "That's different," she said. "I actually need privacy." The room went quiet in a way I had never heard before. Not dramatic movie silence. Real silence. The kind where people suddenly become fascinated by napkins, ice cubes, and the labels on soda bottles. I looked at Marissa. She looked back with a warning in her eyes, like I was embarrassing her by existing inside the conversation she had started. Every old version of me tried to step in. Make a joke. Change the subject. Let her explain it away in the car. Apologize later for seeming tense. Instead, I put my phone face up on the table. "You're right," I said. "If having nothing to hide means sharing everything, then let's both do it." Marissa's smile twitched. "Don't start this right now. You started it when you told everyone I needed a leash." Nobody moved. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't reach for her phone. I didn't accuse her of anything in front of everyone. I just said what I should have said years earlier. "Starting tonight, I'm not doing one-sided tracking anymore. If we both share locations, fine. If we both keep our privacy, fine. But I'm done being monitored like a teenager while you call your secrecy healthy." Marissa leaned closer and whispered, "You're humiliating me." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because the nerve of it hit me in the chest. "You made me the joke," I said. "I'm just refusing to be the punchline." Calvin cleared his throat and tried to save the room. "Maybe we should take a breath," he said. Tessa looked at me, then at Marissa, then at Derek. Derek had stopped smirking, but only barely. Marissa stood up and said she needed air. She took her phone with her, of course. The rest of the night limped along for another 20 minutes before I said we should go. People hugged awkwardly. Calvin squeezed my shoulder at the door and said, "Text me later, okay?" Marissa didn't say a word until we got in the car. Then she started before I even backed out of the driveway. "So what are you hiding?" I kept both hands on the wheel. "Nothing." "Then why turn it into a scene?" "I didn't." "You did." She scoffed. "You embarrass me in front of our friends because you're suddenly obsessed with my phone." "I didn't mention your phone." "You implied it." "No. I said I'm not being tracked one-sided anymore." She crossed her arms and stared out the passenger window. "You've changed." That was another one of her favorite lines. "You've changed." She always said it when I stopped accepting something. At a red light, my phone buzzed in the cup holder. Marissa glanced at it immediately. "Who's texting you?" "I didn't touch it." I don't know. You're not going to check? Not while I'm driving. She made a small sound, like even that was suspicious. When we got home, I walked into the bedroom, picked up my phone, and turned off location sharing. Her phone chimed almost instantly. Even though she was standing 20 feet away from me, my phone lit up with her text. Marissa, turn it back on. Me, no. Marissa, this is not normal. Me, neither is tracking your spouse 24/7 while refusing the same standard. Marissa, so you admit you want to track me. Me, no. I want the same rules for both of us. Marissa, you are acting guilty. Me, I'm acting done. She didn't respond for 8 minutes. Then I heard the bathroom door click shut. I went to the kitchen for water. My hands were shaking a little, and I hated that. The shared tablet was on the counter next to a stack of mail and a bag of hamburger buns we had forgotten to put away. It pinged. I didn't touch it at first. It was our tablet, but I had become so used to being accused of hovering that I stood there like it might burn me. A notification slid down before the screen dimmed. Email recovery alert. The account name was not Marissa's regular email. It was a random phrase with numbers at the end. The preview showed a security code. I stared at it longer than I should have. Then another notification popped up. Derek, you okay? You seemed weird tonight. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. The preview was enough to make my stomach drop. Marissa came out of the bathroom with her phone in her hand and her face too blank. Why are you standing there? She asked. The tablet pinged. Her eyes flicked to it. Then she walked over fast, picked it up, and said, Stop hovering over my stuff. Our stuff, I said. This is exactly what I mean. Her voice sharpened. You're becoming creepy. I looked at the tablet in her hand. Derek asked if you were okay. Her face changed for a split second, then snapped back into anger. He's our friend. I didn't say he wasn't. You're acting like a jealous teenager. No, I said. I'm noticing things. She rolled her eyes and walked away. That night, I slept in the guest room for the first time in our marriage. I didn't sleep much. I kept thinking about Derek's smirk at dinner, about the unknown email account, about Marissa's phone always being face down, about the way she had said, I actually need privacy, like privacy was a luxury item only she could afford. The next morning, I did something I should have done much earlier. I stopped arguing out loud. I started putting things in writing. When Marissa demanded I turn location sharing back on, I replied by text. Me, I am willing to discuss mutual boundaries. I am not willing to be tracked one-sided. Marissa, you sound like a lawyer. Me, I'm trying to be clear. Marissa, clear about what? That you don't want your wife knowing where you are? Me, clear that privacy cannot only belong to you. She didn't answer for a while, which usually meant she was deciding which version of the conversation would make me sound worse later. I changed my personal passwords that day. Email, banking, cloud storage, phone account, everything. I checked which devices had access to my accounts and removed old permissions from apps we hadn't used in years. I stopped using the shared tablet for anything personal. I separated a few financial things in a way that was boring, legal, and practical. And yes, I met with a divorce attorney. Not because I had already decided to leave, because I realized I didn't understand my own options, and not knowing had kept me passive for too long. The attorney was calm. She didn't act shocked. Somehow, that made me feel worse. Document communication, she said. Don't access anything you aren't legally allowed to. Do not retaliate by tracking her. Protect your accounts. If counseling is on the table, put the request in writing. So I did. Marissa called that building a case. Maybe I was, but only because she kept trying to turn reality into fog. For the next 3 days, our house felt like a place where every room had ears. Marissa moved around with tight shoulders and dramatic silence. She would make coffee without asking if I wanted any, then slam the cabinet just softly enough to pretend it was accidental. She kept her phone with her constantly. If she took a shower, the phone went into the bathroom. If she cooked, it sat behind the toaster where I couldn't see the screen. If she slept, it was under her pillow. I didn't ask for it. I didn't ask where she was going when she left for an hour after dinner and came back saying she had needed to clear her head. I didn't mention that the camera doorbell showed her leaving in a nicer jacket than she usually wore for a walk. I didn't accuse. I wrote down the date, the time, and exactly what happened. That felt cold at first. Then it felt sane. 3 days after the dinner, Tessa asked if I could talk. Her text came in while I was sitting in the guest room folding laundry from a basket I had ignored all week. Tessa, can I call you? It's important. I stared at it for a minute before replying. Mia? She called almost immediately. Her voice was low and nervous. I'm sorry. I don't want to make this worse. That's not a great opening. I know. She exhaled. I need to send you something. And I'm sorry I didn't say anything sooner. My chest tightened. What is it? Screenshots. Some are from a chat I'm in. One was sent to me after dinner by someone else because people started talking. I thought it was just bad jokes before. I didn't understand the whole thing. A minute later, my phone started buzzing. The first screenshot was from a smaller group chat I was not in. Not the main friend chat. Marissa, Tessa, and 2 other women from the group. Marissa, he thinks I'm paranoid, but honestly it's convenient. I always know when I have time. Someone had replied with laughing emojis. Another message from Marissa said, Marissa, if he stops at the store, I know I've got at least 20 minutes. My thumb hovered over the screen. I didn't want to scroll. I did anyway. The next screenshot was different. Tessa said it had been forwarded to her by someone else after the dinner because apparently people were starting to compare notes. It showed messages between Marissa and Derek. Derek, is he still out? Marissa, yeah. He's at the hardware store. Derek, how much time? Marissa, depends if he remembers what he went for LOL. Derek, location husband comes in handy. Marissa, don't call him that. Derek, fine. Your early warning system. Marissa, honestly, it helps us avoid awkward timing. I read that last line 5 times. Avoid awkward timing. Not I miss you. Not I love you. Not even proof of a physical affair. Somehow, that almost made it more insulting. My marriage had been turned into logistics. My privacy had been turned into their convenience. Marissa had not been watching me because she was afraid I would betray her. She had been watching me so she could know when it was safe for her to betray me emotionally, socially, and maybe more. I still didn't know how far it had gone, but I knew enough. Tessa was quiet on the phone. I'm sorry, she said again. I should have said something before. At dinner, when she said the leash thing, I saw your face, and I realized we'd been laughing along with something that wasn't funny. I swallowed hard. Thank you for sending them. I don't want to be the hero here, she said quickly. I'm not. I avoided conflict. I just couldn't watch her tell everyone you were the problem. I appreciate it. What are you going to do? I looked toward the hallway. I could hear Marissa opening and closing drawers in the bedroom. I'm not sure yet, I said, but I'm not going to do what she expects. The old me would have confronted her immediately. The old me would have stormed into the bedroom holding my phone, shaking with anger, begging her to explain something she would only deny. This time, I called the attorney first. Then I emailed Marissa. Subject: boundaries and counseling. Marissa, I am not turning location sharing back on under a one-sided arrangement. If we continue this marriage, I need the following. No more one-sided tracking. No jokes about leashes, surveillance, or me needing to be monitored. Full honesty about your private communication with Derek. No more contact with him while we decide what happens next. Marriage counseling with someone neutral. All important conversations about this in writing or in counseling. This is not about revenge. This is about whether our marriage can exist without control and double standards. Hubert. She called me 12 times after that email. I didn't answer. Then the text came. Marissa, you are insane. Marissa, Tessa is a snake. Marissa, those messages are out of context. Marissa, you had no right to see private conversations. Me, I did not access your phone or accounts. The screenshots were sent to me. Marissa, so you're letting people interfere in our marriage? Me, you brought our marriage into the room when you joked about tracking me. Marissa, you're making me sound like a monster. Me, I'm describing what happened. That last line became my anchor. I'm describing what happened. Not exaggerating. Not begging. Not defending myself from accusations designed to exhaust me. Just describing what happened. Marissa came into the guest room that night and stood in the doorway. So this is what you're doing now? She asked. I was sitting on the edge of the bed with my phone beside me, not in my hand. What am I doing? Punishing me. I'm setting boundaries. Oh, stop. Don't use therapy words on me. I looked at her. You've been using them on me for years. Her eyes narrowed. I needed to feel safe. Then why was my location useful when you were talking to Derek? She froze. Only for a second. Then her face twisted into outrage. You're spying on me. No. Someone sent me screenshots. Tessa. I didn't answer. She laughed once, sharp and ugly. Of course. She's always wanted to feel important. This isn't about Tessa. It is if you're taking her side over your wife. I'm taking reality's side. She stepped into the room. Nothing happened. I didn't ask that. Because you already decided I'm guilty. I decided that using my location to know when you had time to privately message Derek was not about safety. She opened her mouth, then closed it. That was the first time in years I had said something specific enough that she couldn't immediately turn it into a personality flaw of mine. The final confrontation happened the next weekend at a family dinner. I didn't want to go. Marissa insisted. She said canceling would make people ask questions, which was ironic considering she had spent years asking questions if I spent too long buying milk. Her parents were there. Elaine, her mother, had always believed marriage meant total openness, but mostly when it came to husbands. Grant, her father, was quieter. He disliked conflict and usually studied his plate until the storm passed. My sister came too. She had sensed something was off and refused to let me sit alone in a room full of people who only had Marissa's version. Before we left, Marissa stood in front of the hallway mirror putting on earrings. Please don't be weird tonight, she said. I picked up my keys. Don't lie about me tonight. She looked at me through the mirror. I'm serious, Hubert. So am I. Dinner started stiff and polite. Elaine served food like feeding people would hold the room together. Grant asked me if I wanted more iced tea. My sister watched Marissa the way you watch a pot that's about to boil over. Marissa had clearly prepared. Halfway through dinner, Elaine put down her fork and said, Marriage requires openness, Hubert. I don't understand why a husband would suddenly turn off his location unless there was something he didn't want his wife to know. Marissa looked down at her plate, playing wounded. There it was. The narrative. Hubert changed overnight. Hubert got secretive. Hubert humiliated his wife. Hubert must be hiding something. I wiped my mouth with a napkin and nodded. I agree that marriage requires openness, I said. What I don't agree with is one person being monitored while the other uses privacy as a shield. Marissa said, that is not what happened. I looked at her. Then say it clearly. Were you willing to share your location too? She glared. I need privacy. So did I. Elaine said, but Marissa was worried about you. I took out my phone. My hand was steady, which surprised me. I'm not going to read private messages out loud, I said. I'm not here to embarrass anyone, but I am going to correct the lie that this was about safety. Marissa's face changed. Not sadness. Fear. I slid printed screenshots across the table. Not every message. Not anything graphic. Just the ones about my location being convenient. The one about the store. The one about the hardware store. The one calling me an early warning system. Grant picked up the paper first. Elaine leaned over. My sister read one line and said, very quietly, Oh, Hubert. Marissa stood up so fast her chair scraped against the floor. You printed my private messages? No, I said. I printed messages that were sent to me after you made our marriage a public joke. Derek was not at that dinner, but his name sat there like he was. Elaine's mouth opened, then closed. Grant looked at Marissa and asked, Who is Derek in this? Marissa's eyes flashed. A friend. A friend who needed to know where your husband was? He asked. She looked betrayed that he had asked a normal question. I said, a friend who joked that my location helped avoid awkward timing. Marissa turned on me. You're enjoying this. No, I said. I'm ending it. That was the moment the room shifted. For years, Marissa had been able to make every boundary sound like suspicion. Every question sound like insecurity. Every objection sound like guilt. But she could not do it with the words sitting on the table in black and white. Elaine picked up one page and read it again. Her face went from defensive to confused to something close to embarrassed. Marissa, she said softly, what is this? Marissa crossed her arms. It was a joke. My sister said, which part? Marissa snapped, this is none of your business. My sister leaned back. You made it family business when your mom accused him over dinner. Grant put the screenshots down and rubbed his forehead. I don't like this, he said. Marissa latched onto that. Exactly. This is humiliating. Grant looked up at her. I mean, I don't like what you did. She looked like he had slapped her. The rest of dinner was over even if no one said it. Elaine tried to get Marissa to sit down. Marissa cried, but it wasn't the kind of crying that made me move toward her anymore. It was the kind that used to make everyone stop asking questions. This time, the questions stayed in the room. On the drive home, Marissa was silent for 10 minutes. Then she said, "You destroyed my relationship with my parents." I kept my eyes on the road. "No, I let them see the part you hid. You made me look awful." I described what happened. She hit the dashboard lightly with her palm. "Stop saying that." I didn't answer. The fallout was ugly, but it was clean in a way the marriage had not been clean for years. Marissa tried every version of the story. The screenshots were jokes. Tessa was jealous. Derek meant nothing. I had emotionally abandoned her by making her feel unsafe. Nothing physical happened. None of it would have happened if I had been more affectionate. I listened to all of it once. Then I said, "I'm willing to discuss my part in our marriage problems in counseling. I'm not willing to accept blame for you using my location to manage secret communication with someone in our friend group." She hated that sentence because it was too specific to twist. The friend group fractured almost immediately. Tessa apologized to me in person. We met for coffee in a quiet place where neither of us had to perform. She looked tired and guilty. "I thought it was just a bad joke until I realized it wasn't," she said. "I should have spoken up when she made those comments before." "How many comments were there?" I asked. She looked down at her cup. "Enough." That hurt, but I appreciated the honesty. "I'm grateful you sent the screenshots," I said, "but I need distance from the group for a while." "I understand." Calvin called me the next day. "I'm sorry, man," he said. "I thought it was just weird couple banter." "So did I said. He was quiet. Then he said, "For what it's worth, Derek's acting like the victim now." I'm not surprised. He keeps saying nothing physical happened. I stared out the window at the driveway. Funny how people say that like it wipes away everything else. Derek eventually texted me. "Derek, this got blown way out of proportion. Nothing physical happened." I replied once. "Me, do not contact me again." Then I blocked him. From what I heard later, Derek lost more than my friendship. People started looking back at every dinner, every inside joke, every time he and Marissa disappeared into the kitchen at the same time. Nobody knew exactly what had happened, but nobody trusted his "nothing happened" speech either. Marissa's parents stopped pushing the "husbands and wives should have no secrets" line after Grant asked her one question she could not answer. "If that's true," he said, "why did Hubert have no privacy while you had all of it?" Marissa cried. Elaine comforted her. But nobody argued with me after that. I offered counseling one more time. Not the fake kind where one person goes to collect vocabulary for future arguments. Real counseling. Full honesty. No contact with Derek. No tracking. No jokes about leashes. No treating privacy like something only she deserved. Marissa agreed for exactly one session. The therapist's office was small and too warm. There was a box of tissues on the table between us, which Marissa used before anyone had said anything difficult. She sat angled slightly away from me, arms crossed, her wedding ring flashing every time she adjusted her sleeve. The therapist asked why we were there. Marissa went first. "I just don't understand why he became so secretive overnight," she said. "We had a system that made me feel safe, and then he suddenly turned it into this huge issue in front of our friends." The therapist looked at me. I took a breath. "I didn't become secretive," I said. "I became unavailable for surveillance." The therapist wrote something down. Marissa hated that. "That sounds rehearsed," she said. "It's accurate." She turned to the therapist. "See? He talks like he's making a statement for court." The therapist asked, "What would accountability look like to you, Marissa?" Marissa dabbed her eyes. "I want him to admit he hurt me by shutting me out." The therapist waited. "And Derek?" she asked. Marissa's face hardened. "Derek is a distraction." I knew then. Not suspected. Knew. She didn't want repair. She wanted the old system back, with better language. 2 weeks later, I started the separation process. Quietly. Legally. Carefully. I didn't make a dramatic post. I didn't blast screenshots online. I didn't try to track her back. I didn't become the person she had accused me of being. I just left the system she had built around me. The practical parts were exhausting. Passwords. Accounts. Documents. A temporary place to stay. Conversations with my sister. Short, careful emails with Marissa. List of shared bills. More records than I ever wanted to keep. There was nothing cinematic about it. It was just paperwork and grief and the strange relief of choosing reality over confusion. Marissa tried one last time to pull me back into the old argument. "Marissa, I hope your privacy keeps you warm at night." I looked at the message for a long time. Then I typed, "Me, peace probably will." I didn't send anything else. The first night after I moved into a temporary place, I went to pick up dinner. Halfway there, I pulled into a parking lot and sat for 15 minutes because I wanted to. No explanation. No incoming call. No screenshot of a map. No, "Why are you there?" text. Just me, an idling car, a paper bag of food on the passenger seat, and the strange quiet of not being watched. I used to think trust meant proving where I was every minute. Now I know better. Trust is not handing someone a live feed of your life so they can decide whether you are behaving. Trust is not being trained to answer for every stoplight, every errand, every low battery warning. Someone who loves you may want to know you are safe. They do not need to keep you under surveillance so they can lie more comfortably. And the day I turned off my location was not the day I destroyed my marriage. It was the day I finally found myself on the map again. If you like the stories, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.